You give me half the chance, I can help you with your little problem.
I don't have a little problem. I just have a little reoccurring dream.
Welcome to Horror Month.
These are ancient dream demons. Supposedly, they roam the dreams of the living, so they find the most evil, twisted human imaginable.
Welcome back, horror fans and Nightmare on Elm Street fans, to the 6th movie in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise.
Freddy's Dead, the final nightmare.
Which, I know, really wasn't exactly the final nightmare, but for all intents and purposes, this was the final nightmare, and it was in 3D!
And what I have on here, I actually found, these are the original 3D glasses that I had when I saw this movie way back in the day. How I still have these, I have no idea. They're kind of torn up. One side of them is ripped. I actually have it taped to my head so my glasses don't fall off during this review.
And I used to have a pair of those. I don't know where they went, but the ones I'm wearing right here are the ones that actually came with the laser disc of Freddy's Dead that I used to have.
Alright, you said this is Freddy's Dead. Now, the final nightmare, they also made, if you remember, that one movie called Friday the 13th, the final chapter. And then they ended up making like 10 more. So there's never really a final. I really hate it when they do that. They're like, this is it! This is the end! No more Freddy Krueger after this movie! No more! No, just stop doing that, you know, because you know you're going to make more.
Yeah, well, Friday the 13th actually did it twice, because they did the final chapter and then they did the final Friday.
Alright, so the final Friday, or Nightmare, I don't even know what final this is. It's the final Nightmare, Freddy's Dead. I do remember going to see this. This is not a story. I'm not going to do the whole story thing, but I do remember actually seeing this. I went to go see this with my friend that I went to go see part 3 with, and we both went to go see the final Nightmare because we were so excited to see the end of it. Only the end of it is in 3D though. So here we go. Now, we were talking about how bad Freddy looked in the last movie. That's nothing compared to this movie, people. I mean, Freddy looked horrible in this movie. He looked like he had a bad shaving accident or something.
I don't really have a big story for this either, but I'll tell you who I went to the movies with to see this. Because it was kind of strange. It was like, I knew this was coming out. I was like, man, you know, it's Freddy Krueger again. I'm going to go see it, no matter what, because I'm a Freddy fan. I'm a Nightmare on Elm Street fan. And seeing it in 3D, oh man, that's even better. So, but I was getting together with my friend Robin and my brother, and we were going to go see it, and then all of a sudden it sort of became a group of us going to see it, because it ended up with, I ended up going with a girl that I actually, a little bit later on, I ended up dating her, and then one of our friends from work, and then another friend from work, so it was like a big group of us went all of a sudden. So it was kind of strange, and we all had a good time with it. It was fun. It was actually really fun to be there and sit there and watch Freddy and watch him in 3D. Now, as far as Freddy Krueger goes in this film, you're exactly right. He looked terrible.
Bitch, 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 bitch.
This was the worst look for Freddy ever. I said in Nightmare 5 that he started to look like a cartoon. This one, he was completely a cartoon in this movie. It was still Robert Englund. It was still Freddy, but he looked terrible as far as Freddy goes, because they tried to use the David Miller look with the Kevin Yeager look. You know, I don't know if it was the lighting, I don't know if it's the way they showed Freddy, but every scene, he looked horrible. He looked like a cartoon.
I think one of the big problems here with this movie and some of the other ones before it was they didn't know how to film Freddy. Like, you watch the first movie, Freddy's always in the shadows, so you only see parts and pieces of his face, and it makes him scarier, even though the makeup in the first one was amazing. This one, they show him in full daylight and full light, and you know, you can see his whole makeup. Like I said, it looked like he had a bad shaving accident. He had a couple cuts here and there, and it was horrible looking, and it was awful. I think if they had, because there was a couple scenes in this movie where they did put him in the shadows, and the makeup didn't look bad once you film it correctly, and this movie was not done that way.
I would agree, because there's too many scenes where it's like bright, where Freddy's standing there and you see everything, head to toe, everything of Freddy. There's a part where Freddy's standing there and he's just clicking his one blade and tapping his foot, and they go up from his foot all the way up to his face, but you see all of him, and it's like, yeah, it's kind of a cool scene, but at the same time, he's not scary. He's not scary at all in this movie, at all.
Yeah, and so you mentioned in the last film, and then probably the film before it, about the stereotype, about how all the kids, one was a jock, and one was a comic book artist, and one was, you know, again, that is this film. I think they sit there and they go down a list, and they're like, okay, who haven't we used yet? Let's see. And they just mark off the stereotypes, and let's put those in this movie because they're not in there yet.
Yeah, so now we got a guy who can't hear, and so you got a girl that's, you know, for some reason she's in karate training or something, like MMA training.
Maybe she was the sister of the Karate Kid guy from Part 4.
I don't know. And then, of course, you've got the video game guy, you know, and which actually the whole video game scene in here is, you know, it's a classic Freddy kill, but at the same time, it's like, again, cartoon.
Come on, John. Get out of here now, please. Now.
Hey, you forgot the power glove.
God, yeah. Well, the thing is with this video game guy, I think they showed him playing a handheld video game one time. That was it. They never showed him. He was like he was a stoner. He was a pothead guy.
This is your brain on drugs. Question?
Yeah, what are you on? Looks like a frying pan and some eggs to me.
And they only ever showed him playing like I don't know what it was, Ninja Gaiden or something. I don't even a little handheld. All of a sudden, he's video game guy. But anyway, so the story of this, there was parts of this movie I thought were really good. I loved the fact that they gave Freddy a daughter in this movie. I actually liked her, the woman that was portraying her in this film. I thought she did a really good job. And the rest of the kids in this movie, horrendous. I thought they were absolutely terrible in this film. Worse than they were in Part 4. I mean, I thought that was the worst out of all of them.
Leslie Zane, I think her name is the main. She's actually the sister of Billy Zane, who played in Titanic as the Cal, Rose's fiance.
Now let me stop you here. Now, were any of these people in any of the Jaws films, Vince?
No, they weren't in any of the Jaws films.
I wanted to make sure before. Okay, keep going now.
But the video game guy is Breckin Meyer, who eventually went on to play in not only the Garfield movies, he's also one of the guys who does the voices and I think some of the stories for Robot Chicken. And it's got Yaphet Kotto in it, who was in Alien. You know, the black guy. In Alien.
I'm barely being paid.
He was. Oh yeah, okay. And you know, he wasn't bad. He actually, I like his character a lot. I think he's a really good actor, and he was probably like the only really good actor in this film. Now, again, let me tell you about the story. I don't really know what happened to this movie. It was, okay, it's supposed to be the final nightmare, so let's get together, try to make the best nightmare we possibly can. This was not it. This was not even in that same ballpark. Wasn't even the same nightmare. Wasn't even the same dream. It wasn't even in the same universe as any of the other nightmares. Now, the nightmare sequences themselves were okay, some of them anyway, but my biggest problem, once they get back to Springwood, I thought that they were dreaming, and that would have made sense to me. I thought maybe they got into a car accident and they get to Springwood and they're all dreaming this stuff up, that none of it was real, because none of it made much sense. It was horrible. Roseanne Barr, the person I cannot stand, you talk about somebody who I just cannot stand, shows up in this movie. I was like, oh my god, it went from really, really bad to really, 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 really bad.
Bitch, 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 bitch. Nobody's ever happy.
I never liked that from the beginning. I never liked the fact that she was in this. And she's only in a cameo. It's only a cameo role. But it's her and, at the time, her husband, Tom Arnold, who, if there's one person that I can't stand even more than Roseanne, it's him. I can't stand Tom Arnold. But why stick him in a Freddy movie? I have no idea.
I thought the bitch was white! God damn it! I thought the bitch was white! Fuck!
So they get to Springwood, and apparently it's like a ghost town. It's like nobody there is in Springwood. Nobody. There's like nobody exists because they took all the kids away, and apparently people can't survive without having kids. Which, okay, I'm pretty good with that.
It was only the parents, only the adults that are there.
And then they go like to a school, and there's a guy, and this is where I thought it was a dream sequence because it's so stupid. There's a guy like teaching a classroom with no students in there. He's just sitting there just talking away and writing stuff on the chalk. And I was like, what is going on here? Is this real? Is it? And then they kept driving around in the circles, which I didn't understand either. Because again, if it was a dream, okay, I get it. They're lost in the dream. No, they're just driving around in circles and end up in the same freaking place.
What? Yeah, well, the map says we're fucked.
Okay, the lady who directed this film was Rachel Talalay. And Rachel Talalay has actually been in the Nightmare series the whole time, pretty much. From the very beginning, from the very first Nightmare on Elm Street movie. So she took on the whole thing of directing a film of Freddy Krueger because she figured, well, I've done all these movies, I can do one, I can direct one.
Wrong.
Yeah, I know, but that's what she thought.
Wrong.
And that's probably where all this really got mixed up. Because, yeah, okay, you might have been hanging around on the set, but obviously she didn't understand Freddy or the rules of Nightmare on Elm Street.
The other thing is, again, they go to an orphanage, and there's some crazy woman walking around the orphanage talking to kids that don't exist there. And I'm like, all right, I don't understand this. Why is... And then what really got to me is they end up going into this house, and I was thinking it was going to be like that Nightmare on Elm Street or the Halloween movie where they just changed Michael Myers' house, where they made it into a mansion. That's like, this is Halloween. That's not the Nightmare on Elm Street house. That's not Freddy's house. And then all of a sudden, like in Poltergeist, the house kind of crumbles up, tears apart, and there is the Elm Street house they just went into. How does that happen in reality? I mean, that's not reality. I don't understand any of that.
Now see what you done did!
Jesus.
We're in Twin Peaks here.
Definitely. Have we seen enough? Yeah. Good.
Some of the sequences, some of the Nightmare sequences, I did like. And I did like that. But not only do we have the stereotypes, but we have the one-liners. And the constant one-liners. Every line he says in here is a one-liner. I'll get you, my pretty, and your little soul, too! Ha ha! You know.
Yeah, that was terrible. I can tell you the only dream sequence in this entire movie that I actually liked, that I thought was inventive and pretty cool, was the guy with the hearing aid. I liked that one. That was like the only good one where he actually puts like a creature on his ear and he starts throwing things, you know, to where the guy's, you know, super hearing now. That's the only one in this entire movie that was even remotely cool.
Yeah, I love that. No, I wouldn't say it was the only one, but it was. I love that one. I think that was the best one.
And then you were talking about video game guy. Okay, now this is the other reason. So when I was watching this and they're going to sleep in the house, I was like, okay, well maybe it's not a nightmare they're having because they're sleeping. Are they sleeping within a nightmare? Are they having a nightmare and actually sleeping and going into another nightmare? Because I don't still understand what's happening here. But then he starts bouncing around like Looney Tunes. Bing, bing. It looks like the Roger Rabbit movies.
Like I said, cartoon. It became a cartoon.
In reality, a person wouldn't do that. Bing, 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 bing. And they're sitting there watching him going, well, yeah, obviously he's dreaming. What? It's horrible. It's bad. It's really bad.
Freddy did kill somebody, and he collected their soul again, because now all of a sudden he's collecting souls again. I liked how they did that. Like they would disappear, and then he would, it would zap into Freddy's chest, and he'd be like, I liked how they did that. But, it was just, again, every time they showed Freddy, it was a cartoon. This movie was so cartoonish.
Now is it underlaying or underlying? It's under. Just put it under this film. Story would have been a good one, and I think they had a good story somewhere in this mess.
I mean, I liked the fact that they introduced Freddy's daughter, but the one thing I've always said about it was, it's the 6th film. You waited to the 6th film to show his background? To show any kind of background to Freddy? To show his daughter? To introduce his daughter in it? And you have the title, Final Nightmare. Okay, the last movie, you're going to finally introduce, what happened pre-Nightmare on Elm Street? It's a little late for that, is what I'm getting at.
Every town has an Elm Street.
Well, the one sequence that I like in this movie is the flashback with Robert Englund and his young daughter there, and then his wife comes running out of the basement. Oh, I didn't mean to find it. I didn't mean to find it. Now, she had not said anything, and then he kills, the mother, and then the daughter goes down, and you realize there's a door down. That's kind of dumb, though, but there's a door down the basement that has a padlock on it. I guess he forgot to lock it. And if you're going to have a secret stash or a kill room, come on now. I mean, not have just a door where you can walk into.
Well, I think Freddy would have been smarter than that, too. That he would have locked it up and made sure it was locked.
That wasn't too bad, because I enjoyed seeing his past at that, the few minutes that it wasn't bad. It was pretty good, I guess.
Okay, you talk about seeing Freddy's past. Now, this is where we get into the 3D part of this film. Originally, it was in 3D in the theaters. They've shown the 3D part on the Laserdisc. They've thrown it on the DVD set.
I went through all the extras on this movie, and it's not on there. So unless it's on the later discs, it's not on this disc.
When they get into the 3D part is when they get even more into Freddy's background, because they do this as she puts on the 3D glasses and she enters Freddy's mind, which I thought was really cool. They get into Freddy's mind, and you get to see even more of his background when he was a kid and all this. And you see him, hitting hamsters or mice or something with a hammer, and Alice Cooper shows up as his stepfather, or one of his many stepfathers, apparently. And that was pretty cool. I liked the Alice Cooper scene.
Time to take your medicine, boy!
But then the whole 3D thing, even when we saw it in the theaters, it wasn't quite 3D. It was like, some of it was. There's like parts where they're sticking the ball bat out into the into the screen, and there were, you know, knives, and they're going, oh, yeah, we can kill him with this, you know. And they're doing all that, and then when it gets to actually killing Freddy, it doesn't really look like 3D. There's like parts of it that don't, it just kind of clears it up and made it 2D.
And if you watched our review for the second film, you know, Wes Craven and everybody was so upset they actually brought Freddy into the real world to kill teenagers. Here, they did the same thing. They brought him out of the dream into the real world to kill him. And I guess they figured that's the only way they could kill Freddy, is to bring him out and have his physical form in front of him and blow him up, and that's it. And that's the end of him, and there is no more Freddy after that. Again, the whole end of it was dumb. I didn't like it at all. I thought it was terrible. And as you were saying, the 3D effects, it was very, the best way to describe it is it's very Three Stooges-like, you know, and you watching it now all these years later, it's like, look, it's my finger. My finger is in 3D. You know, it's terrible. It's horrible.
You know, I said after watching all the saga, the whole series as a whole, you know, I said Nightmare 2 was probably one of the weakest. This, I actually, after watching this in sequence now, compared to when I first watched it, I would actually say this is probably this is even weaker than Nightmare 2.
It is when we do these reviews, like we did with the Halloween films, we watch one after another, after another, after another, after another, and you start to see that. You start to see where the franchise starts breaking down and starts falling apart, and this was it. I mean, this was it. This is as bad as it got, I guess.
And there were still parts of it that's enjoyable. There were still parts of it I still, you know, yeah, I kind of like that, and I kind of like that dream sequence, and that nightmare kill, and that's classic Freddy. You know, I still liked Robert Englund's performance in it. So, I mean, there's still some things that I liked in it, but as far as the story and the dialogue goes in this movie, it was terrible. You know, it was every bit as bad or actually worse than Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
So overall, I am going to have to give Freddy's Dead, the final nightmare, even though it's not, but at this point it was the final nightmare, a 2 out of 5.
I also give Freddy's Dead, the final nightmare, a 2 out of 5.
Now, there are some extras on here, and I'm really kind of curious as to see what they can say about this film. So, let's get to them right now.
Again, no commentary, so we can't dig into the audio commentaries for this.
By directing the film, I had decided that this is something I really wanted to do. I had worked with enough directors and been producing long enough that I had such a passion for the project. So, and I thought, well, I've got to do everything I can to get the ammunition together to say, you've got to let me do this.
Her influence for this movie was Twin Peaks. And I know very little about Twin Peaks. I never really watched the series, but I don't know. I don't think I would necessarily see the influence of Twin Peaks in Freddy's Dead. So that's probably where they got the whole line where he says, we're in Twin Peaks here. But the other thing she was able to do with this, which I did find a little bit interesting, was she worked with John Waters on the movie Crybaby. And, of course, in that movie you have Johnny Depp. So she was able to get all these cameos. There's a bunch of people that were in that movie that she was able to get cameos and able to get them to come and do Freddy's Dead with her, I guess. And maybe that's where she got Alice Cooper from, I don't know, but she got Iggy Pop to do the last song in the film, which I actually really enjoy. I liked his song in there, but she does like this little music video at the very end of the movie, and that's his song. And it actually turned out really well, but that's where she got Iggy Pop to do it, was because she knew him from Crybaby, I guess.
So the fact that they made me shoot it in 3D, but I was completely limited in shooting in 3D. Suddenly you're in this basement, you know, with a baseball bat that you can put toward camera, and it's become all about how do I make the 3D work, not how do I make the killing of Freddy interesting.
Yeah, it didn't turn out the way she really wanted it to do, but then again, it was kind of like she said, well, we end up killing Freddy with his own glove. So, you have that. The whole 3D thing was, and I've seen this in other interviews, where the people that were actually putting the 3D in the movie, or when they were trying to film it, they were like, or after they filmed it, they went back and looked at it, and it was like, this isn't really working for this film. You're actually going to put this out in the theaters, and it's supposed to be in 3D, and it doesn't really look like it's 3D. So next up, we have an extra called 86.
And this is Bob Shea trying not to say this movie sucked, but he basically says it sucks.
Actually, what it is where he's talking about where they finally decided to go ahead and kill Freddy off. That basically he looked at it and got with all his people, all of his, entourage or whatever, and said, what more can we do with Freddy? What more can we do with Nightmare on Elm Street? And pretty much nobody could come up with anything else to really do with Nightmare on Elm Street. And so they decided to go ahead and say, this is it, this is the last one, we're not doing it anymore. Freddy's dead, the final nightmare, and that's the way it's going to be. This is going to be the end. We're going to kill off this incredible horror icon. And yeah,
and he basically said it sucks.
For the most part, he knew it didn't come out the way they really wanted it to come out, but so be it. It's done.
All right, the next extra is the weirdest extra probably on all of these. Is Clive Barker. He comes on there, basically said the movie sucks, and it lasts for like 2 seconds. And I'm like, what was that? Where did that come from?
Again, this is one of those clips that came from the DVD box set, because Clive Barker is actually in that too, and he's talking about Freddy and Pinhead, and how they're similar, or they're this and that, or how and how all these movies and how it relates to horror and this and that. It was actually a lot longer sequence that they had on the DVD box set. Here it's just clipped down to this basic part, and he's talking about pretty much the same thing Robert Shea said, was how much more could you do with it? You watered it down for 6 episodes, and that's pretty much it. It's done.
And it is done, and that's the last one for Freddy's Dead. The extras were just about as bad as the movie, but luckily there wasn't a whole lot here, and they were all short, so that's like the only good thing about that.
And once again, the Laserdisc actually had the 3D ending to the movie. This one doesn't have it. I don't know if it's on the bonus disc or what, but this one doesn't have it in there, and I don't know why. I don't know why they didn't add it, because they've had it on the Laserdisc, they've had it on the DVD, they've had it on, on these all these other formats. Why not this one?
Because it would probably cost an extra 50 cents to put the 3D glasses in there with it, and they decided not to do that, probably.
But that's it for Freddy's Dead, the Final Nightmare.
But Freddy isn't dead, because he comes back once again for another movie, and we are going to have that for you guys here, for all of you maniacs here on Horror Month. Hope you guys have been enjoying this whole month. It's been a whole lot of work for us, but it's still one of our favorite months of the year to do.